The period from the 9th to the 11th century in European history is also known as the Viking Age. This group of people came from Scandinavia, a northern region. At their peak, their population was only a few million, equivalent to the size of a medium-sized city today. However, the wealth they plundered and looted in one year could match half of France's GDP. They set out from the icy wastelands of northern Europe, conquering vast regions stretching from Britain to Russia with longships and axes. They even sailed as far as North America, becoming some of the earliest Europeans to discover the American continent. Although the Viking era only lasted about 300 years, it profoundly changed the entire history of Europe. They were like the maritime version of the Turks. Although they started by relying on brutal conquests and plundering, they gradually integrated with civilization in their encounters, successfully overcoming their own barbarism. Once known as highway robbers, their descendants went on to establish nations that became beacons of civilized society today. Isn't it quite unbelievable? However, history does have pure coincidences. In this episode, we will talk about the story of the Vikings and see how these pirates from Northern Europe completed a magnificent transformation from barbarism to civilization. The Germanic people lived in ancient Central and Northern Europe as an Indo-European ethnic group originating from southern Scandinavia and northern Germany. It was they who destroyed the Western Roman Empire during the Great Migration period between 4 to 5 AD, then established numerous small states on its ruins. The Germanic people are divided into East, West, and North branches. The North Germanics were also known as Norsemen or Normans, which is essentially Northmen in English, meaning northern people. Among these northern peoples, who was the most famous? That would be our topic today: the Vikings. The Vikings originated from present-day Norway, Sweden, and Denmark, that is, the regions of Scandinavia. So ancient Norwegians, Swedes, and Danes were referred to as Vikings. As early as several centuries before Christ, ancestors of the Vikings had migrated along the shores of the Baltic Sea, living a pastoral life there. They farmed in summer and hunted in winter, relying on forests and seas for survival. They lived in large extended families in wooden longhouses. Their religious beliefs were based on a polytheistic system prevalent in Northern Europe, which is what we now know as Norse mythology, mostly involving gods fighting each other. If you are interested, I can do another episode about it later. Odin was their chief god, holding a spear called Gungnir and sacrificing one eye for wisdom. Other major deities include Thor, the thunder god, with his hammer, who fights giants. Vikings loved to use runes, an ancient alphabet system, engraving these mythological stories on stones, thus creating runestones. Byzantine historians described Vikings as tall, blonde-haired, blue-eyed savages, likely prototypes of the White Walkers in Game of Thrones. However, early Vikings were not as savage as many people imagine. They were even quite civilized in some aspects. For example, Vikings loved cleanliness and bathed weekly, using tweezers and ear spoons to remove stubborn dirt. Men would also groom their beards meticulously, keeping themselves neat and tidy. This made English monks complain that Viking men's frequent bathing attracted local women. Early Viking society was tribal. Each tribe lived independently without a king or unified government. Fans of the movie The 13th Warrior should know that when a chieftain wanted to decide on something, he would convene a meeting where everyone could discuss, and even women could speak up. Regarding the rights of Viking women, they were far more advanced than in other parts of Europe at the time. They could inherit property, initiate divorce, manage farms, engage in trade, and participate in military activities. In 19th century Sweden's Birka, a warrior grave was discovered that archaeologists initially believed belonged to a high-ranking male commander. However, DNA research in 2017 revealed it actually belonged to a woman, indicating women could possibly serve as military commanders back then. So while Vikings were generally less civilized than other parts of Europe, they weren't like ancient nomadic tribes in terms of barbarism. Some may wonder how peaceful Vikings became feared pirates later on. This was indeed due to circumstances. It all started with the climate of Northern Europe. We know that living conditions there are extremely harsh. Scandinavia is rugged and barren, with long cold winters where temperatures can drop below -10s of degrees Celsius. By the 8th century, Europe entered a mini ice age, making the climate even colder and more severe. Meanwhile, Viking populations were growing rapidly. When land could no longer be divided further and younger sons received nothing from their inheritance, expansion outward became inevitable. Vikings believed only those who died in battle would enter Valhalla, their heaven-like realm. Combined with resource scarcity, they realized what they needed to do. Thus, Vikings evolved from small tribes into feared pirates. Initially, there were internal tribal wars among themselves, then they discovered fertile lands and wealth across the sea, turning them into pirates. The word Viking, in Old Norse, actually means seafaring adventurers or pirates. Many people think Vikings wore horned helmets, but that was a 19th century invention for opera stages. Real Viking helmets looked more like alien skullcaps. For their maritime expeditions, Vikings invented flexible longships capable of navigating both rivers and open seas. Not only were they fast like the wind, but they could also withstand huge waves compared to other Europeans at that time. Their ships were way more advanced. When technological breakthroughs met resource pressures, the Vikings' momentum was unstoppable. Almost overnight, they went from being unknown to becoming kings of piracy. While alive, they relied on their ships to plunder everywhere. After death, they would lie in a ship filled with burial goods and be cremated or buried, leaving this world through ship burials. From body to soul, they were always ready for robbery at any moment. This way, around the 8th century AD, these northern people, awakened by resource scarcity, unleashed their warrior genes and ushered in an era that belonged to them, bringing a storm from the frozen north to Europe. In 789 AD, a group of Vikings suddenly arrived on Portland Island off the coast of Dorset, England, coming from Land in western Norway. They raided this port, which was part of the royal domain. Initially, people thought it was just an isolated incident. However, on the 8th of June 793 AD, these unexpected guests appeared again at Lindisfarne Abbey, a small island off the northeast coast of England. The Vikings landed swiftly and brutally with their longships, killing those who resisted, taking slaves, burning buildings. It was all over in less than half a day, a quick raid followed by withdrawal. Their tactics were simple yet brutal. Monasteries were holy sites filled with gold crosses and relics. The monks there had no weapons to defend themselves. How savage must one be to do such things? So this time, it really scared the whole of Europe. The Lindisfarne Abbey incident became a landmark event, marking the official start of the Viking Age. After that, the expansion speed of the Vikings accelerated like clockwork. Besides not being able to go further north, they didn't leave any direction untouched, west, south, or east. They were causing trouble all over Europe. Norwegians moved westward, attacking Ireland, Scotland, and Iceland. Danes marched southward, targeting England and France. Swedes headed eastward along the Baltic Sea and rivers into vast Eastern European regions, even serving as mercenaries in the Byzantine Empire, forming the famous Varangian Guard. Akin to the King's Guard of the Byzantine Emperor, have you guys watched a Japanese anime set during the Viking Age called Vikings in Season 2's farm episode that Snake Brother and his farm guard team should be former Byzantine mercenaries? Additionally, there is a character named Bjaorn in the story, who, when battle is at a stalemate, eats hallucinogenic mushrooms to transform into an unstoppable berserker who can distinguish friend from foe. This berserk transformation is